It has become an electoral bond hot topic. Remember, a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court came out and said that the concept of anonymous electoral bonds was antithetical to democratic systems of political funding in India, and they said no more. They asked the banks that issue, the State Bank of India being the primary issuer, to come out with the list of the people, in fact, to the point of saying that post facto, which means people who have already bought electoral bonds, that their names should be published. Over the past few days, the SBI has represented itself in court requiring or requesting more time to furnish these details. A political frenzy on this is on. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've been doing this for a very long time, and I can tell you that political parties, even though they claim to be in public service, are actually private entities. When the political party leaders join public service, they become MLAs or MPs or councillors or cabinet ministers, then they are public servants. Much like the BCCI, for example, is a private body, even though Team India, in terms of our understanding, is represented, selected by them. I have seen for many decades, whether it came to bringing political parties under the mandate of the right to information, where they objected, said we are not government, okay, to show transparency, to publish lists on their website of where they receive their funding from. It is murky. It's not just murky in India, it's murky all over the world. Now, the premise of electoral bonds as presented by the late Arun Jaitley was that if there is a ruling government, let's say the BJP is in power, and you want to make a donation to the Congress party, but you don't want your name attached to the donation, you buy an electoral bond, okay, from a bank, you give the party the electoral bond, and they can claim the funds held in escrow by that bank. That was the premise. The argument that has been put that this is causing anonymity of donations, the vast majority says the opposition going to the BJP. All of that argument currently is moot. It's moot because the Supreme Court has ruled this is not a practice that is going to continue. So, end of story until legislation potentially doesn't happen, we don't know. So, currently on electoral bonds, the Supreme Court has had the last word. The discussion now is that if 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you as an individual or your company bought an electoral bond, should your name be released either to the court or to the public? Let's open up this conversation. Joining us on the broadcast is Savio Rodriguez. He is, of course, a journalist and a member of the BJP. Arshpreet Khadial is joining us. He is representing the Congress. Vineet Goenka joining us on the broadcast. Manasvi Thapad is joining us on the broadcast as well. And Sharad Kohli is with us as well. Manasvi, let me begin with you to get some perspective onto this. Now, as I've just mentioned, the point of whether electoral bonds are good, bad, ugly, right or wrong, that has currently been settled. That chapter is relatively closed as far as the Supreme Court ruling. So what is the point of contention, point of argument now?
There remains no point of argument. As of now, as of today, there is no argument left. Only thing what was left was the SBI to disclose it. Why is SBI not disclosing it? It is upon SBI to tell. But the reality is it somehow becomes very clear by the conduct of the SBI and the bosses of SBI is that we don't care about the Supreme Court because we are more supreme than you are. Whatever outcome or whatever judgments you may come out with, we may always contempt it and let the court take its own course of time. Since 2018, what we have seen is, though it was unconstitutional, everyone in the common understanding also understood it. It's unconstitutional. We should not go about it. But somehow it was there, and now after finally Supreme Court making it sure that it's unconstitutional, SBI goes. This is a new law in the Indian Constitution under constitutional understanding, okay, that whatever the Supreme Court says, the Supreme Court of our country will not abide by it.
Okay, all right. Okay, I don't want to cast aspersions, but the court itself has said that if you don't do this, they've taken a serious view on it, on the point of contempt, which is what Manasvi in other words is referring to. But Manasvi, then the second question, and set this up because before I go to the rest of the panel, is the submission of the data of those who procure electoral bonds to be held privately by the court, or is it to be released publicly? To the best of your understanding.
See, all these discussions and all these arguments, counter arguments have already been put forward before the Supreme Court. This is not the first time we are having this question. Those people who have funded political parties, shall their names be disclosed or not? Supreme Court has already gone through it and have said that you have to disclose it. It has to be public. When you are funding a political party which is going to be public in nature, you should be open about your funding. Why do you want to be silent about it? Supreme Court has already dealt this in detail.
Okay.
So there is no question about the secrecy of this name.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Political parties are not going to do any kind of.
So that's the premise. The premise is that the concept of electoral bonds now doesn't work in the country. Okay, the chapter on that is closed. The point of contention is the SBI having a list of the people who procured those bonds to be submitted to the court, and the court is of the view that this should be public information. Electoral voters should have information of who has procured electoral bonds. Now, there is a point of argument still left in this, whether the Supreme Court rules on it, doesn't rule on it, and that, Dr. Sharad Kohli, is on retroactively. If the government in a policy has told you that you can make use of this measure with a degree of anonymity, and then 5 years later, your name gets released. Now, at that point of time, you were given an assurance of anonymity, and now you are saying the anonymity does not exist. What kind of precedence issue does that create, potentially, sir?
Well, I think it erodes the trust of people on such schemes. You know, if after 5 years you suddenly change the stance. You're right, absolutely. Because when the scheme was brought in, it was very clear that your name will be kept as Gupt, anonymous. And now after 5 years, if Supreme Court goes and changes the scheme altogether, because the whole premise of the electoral bond donations was that it was secret. You go and buy a bond and it was like a bearer bond. You go and the party encashes. Well, there is no doubt about the fact that SBI was doing a KYC of the people who were buying the bonds. And this KYC was, and although I would like to say here that when the scheme was introduced, Rishabh, you would remember, it was said that although it's anonymous, but then KYC is there if required. It did say that at that point of time, if I remember correctly. If required, these names can be brought on record. But people in good faith, they donated in an anonymous situation. Now, there are two reasons for anonymity, Rishabh. Very interesting. One is ethical. You heard of Gupdan. You know, some people do donations that they don't want to disclose because they say when you disclose the name, you take out the punya out of it. Anyway, that's a different perspective. The second perspective is when you are donating and you do not want your funds, source of funds, your name, your identity, your relationship with the political party, the reason you're donating it, are you deriving any benefit out of it, and so on and so forth. All these aspects remain covered, whereas the donations continue to flow. Now, take a situation, Rishabh, now, as of now, when the electoral bonds are off, elections are around the corner, donations must be happening. Now, how are these donations happening?
No, we don't know. No, we don't know. So we don't become naive to the point that says the political parties are from tomorrow onwards functioning without any funding whatsoever, right? So they're collecting funds. Yes. Finish your thoughts, sir.
That's what I was about to tell. That the funding now is happening in pre-electoral bond era. It is happening that way now, which means the money is just coming in. In cash or whatever way it is coming in. I thought instead of this situation, electoral bonds was much better. At least there was a cap on the amount.
That's an opinion. You can have an even stronger opinion on once you make a commitment that retroactively. I remember this entire thing happened in the Vodafone case where retroactive taxation was done, and it created a quagmire, which I don't think honestly we are out of till now, because you told a company that you are going to be investing in India in this current tax bracket. You missed something. 10 years later, you say not only is the tax bracket wrong, you owe us back taxes to the tune of thousands of crores. Next time you tell a company that this is the tax rate, do they trust you? It becomes a precedence issue. But that's not the point right now. The point now becomes is, should SBI release, and let me come to the nub of it, should they release the list before the elections? Because right now it seems like they are buying time, quote unquote, by saying we have physical records to release the list after the elections. Now, let me quickly get in Arshpreet from the Congress party. Now, Arshpreet, in principle, in premise, the Congress party could be a beneficiary of the electoral bonds as well. The BJP could be a beneficiary. But you are finding it dubious that the SBI is not releasing this list. Why?
Thank you for the question, Rishabh. First and foremost, the moment I got to know about this debate, I recalled a phrase, na khaunga, na khane dunga. I think that has now changed into na bataunga, na batane dunga. The fact of the matter is that the SBI is a government-owned bank. The Bharatiya Janata Party's government has been tom-tomming about digitization ever since they came into power, ever since demonetization. Experts have said it categorically, it would not take any more than 24 hours for the information and the details to be divulged. Therefore, why 1 month, 6 days? Why June 30th, after the election, and the Lok Sabha term expires on the 16th of June? They want to divulge the details after the Lok Sabha term expires. I mean, this is very, very convenient, number one. Number two, when the Supreme Court had asked for the reply to be filed, for the compliance to be done within 3 weeks, why are you not complying with the order of the Supreme Court? Is it not something that the Bharatiya Janata Party has been doing time and again? They have undermined the Supreme Court numerous times. At the time when the Honorable Supreme Court had said include the CJI on the selection committee of the CEC, they did not. Then when the Delhi Powers issue came to the fore, they did not comply with that.
Okay, so Arshpreet, what is your allegation? Are you suggesting that the SBI as a bank is under instructions from the central government to dilly-dally and not release this list? Is that what you're alleging?
What I'm saying is that the SBI is a government-owned bank. What I'm also saying is that the Bharatiya Janata Party should come forward, and in this debate itself, they should start with this one statement: are they in favor of the details to be divulged on the 30th of June, or are they in the favor of the Supreme Court order that should have been complied within 3 weeks? I really want to know, because that would clarify a lot of things. And number two, the nation wants to know, the nation seeks, and a certain entity does not want to disclose. And what that entity is, how it functions, what's the modus, I think the world knows that. The world can connect the dots. And I just have one thing to say, that the electoral bonds have been declared unconstitutional by the Honorable Supreme Court. If it has been declared unconstitutional, if the RBI has made certain if RBI had certain reservations about it, the Election Commission of India had reservations about it.
Okay. For example, so like I said, there is a bottom line. The bottom line is the Supreme Court has closed the chapter. Government is free to go.
Exactly.
Now the Supreme Court has closed the chapter at the Chief Justice bench. Now you can potentially have a constitutional bench kind of appeal. You can potentially legislate later once a new Lok Sabha is formed. So there can be a further story to electoral bonds, but that is not the current story. Now, Savio Rodriguez, an assumption is being made by the Congress party and many other allied quarters that all of this is bunkum. That in this day and age to say that we don't have the data available, it's lying in some register or some file somewhere and we'll have to go manually look for all of it, that this is all bunkum, that this is a loaded gun and somebody's trying to hide it. Why should that assumption be illegitimate?
Title to their assumptions, Rishabh. But let me tell you what my personal view is, not necessarily as somebody who represents the BJP. Right at the onset of the concept of electoral bonds, I have been extremely clear with a campaign that we ran on social media called Why Hide? Why Hide campaign was driven out of the simple premise that any money coming into any political party for the purposes of elections or for the purposes of party activities must be made available to the public so that people know what are the kind of donations coming in and which are the quarters that the donations are coming from. If the rules that are applicable to NGOs receiving foreign fundings coming in, the same rules apply to political parties as well as to the sources of their fundings. Because you all know that there are certain political parties that work with foreign interests or people with anti-India interests, and that information is important to get. Now, as far as the current case is concerned, the Supreme Court has been extremely clear in its observations. And to drag BJP into the failure of the SBI is something that I find a little absurd, because SBI at the end of the day, while being a government-owned bank, has its own ways and means of working. So the Supreme Court will pull up the SBI for failure on delivering of the names on these electoral bonds. But to drag the government into it and to insinuate that the government is holding the SBI bank, I think is rather far-fetched. Okay. So what is the important thing that the citizens of this country need? The citizens of the country need to be assured that our political parties, the funding that are coming in for our political parties, are all of them.
Okay, but Savio, this does not settle the question of transparency in political party funding, which is the point that Dr. Sharad Kohli was making. This only ends the regime of electoral bonds. Now, I'm not expecting any of the political parties. I remember the Aam Aadmi Party at the very get-go had done this, that we will publish a list online of all our donors and we'll do crowdfunding, and that all disappeared, right? It vanished then. They might bring it back, I don't know, but nobody does it. So why do political parties, why are they reticent in telling us who gives the money?
See, the beauty of the electoral bonds was the fact that you could go back and trace the donor or the buyer of that electoral bond. And that is what is now, what the Supreme Court is looking at and saying, what is the concern if that details is made known to the court, or if the court decides to make those details public?
Okay, all right.
And I agree with that.
Okay.
I think every donation that comes to a political party as a citizen of India should be known.
So then the point, Vineet Goenka, is a simple point. Either the SBI is claiming technological incompetence, that we literally kept all this data physically, and you are a digital proponent also, sir. Many people will find that hard to believe, or the assumption is that they are under instructions to keep it under wraps until the elections are over. Now, how do we get past that assumption that is being drawn by certain quarters?
Rishabh ji, Ram Ram to you, Ram Ram to all my co-panelists and all the viewers who are watching us right now. Now, I heard all the learned members before me. There are three parts. In a democracy, who is supreme? Is it the legislature which is supreme, or the Supreme Court which is the supreme? Once a sovereign state gives you a guarantee, if that guarantee is overturned, then it will create doubt about the entire democracy. So as the judgment is passed, I'm nobody to do that, and I don't want to attract any contempt, this thing. But yet, as a common man, I think, this will shudder the image of the elected governments, A, B, or C party.
But Vineet Goenka, government can go and appeal this, no? They can bring legislation in the next parliament, right? So they can do all of these things. Do you buy the argument that the SBI simply does not have the data available readily at hand?
Yeah, I'm coming to that, Rishabh ji. But I remember, in the classic case of Shah Banu, where Rajiv Gandhi had overturned Supreme Court's judgment by passing a legislation, and the sister was denied the alumni. So that cannot be done, but that would not be in the interest of the democracy, because there then the court and the executive comes into conflict. And I think since prevailed, the government will not do that part. True, but I would like to address one larger question in front of you, is the transparency part. Courts want transparencies in every action of the executive, and that is very good. We all, as a common citizen, want that. But they should also adhere to this part of transparency while they are appointed. And the collegium is appointing for the judges, and then we expect everything to be transferred everywhere on the earth. Time bound. A bomb blast judgment of Lajpat Nagar been given after 22 years. The accused are dead, the victims' relatives are dead. But judgment has not come. And here we want the numbers of the SBI bond to come out in 20 days. So this kind of priorities, and so the court has to practice what they preach us. So as a common man, sometimes I feel when the court says give it in time, then we feel like, my lord, will you keep the judgments in time? So here, there are two things.
No, Vineetji, so obviously there is a critique that needs to be put of all sorts of systems in this country. And yes, delays in the legal proceedings are a critique. Transparency in appointments. These, I think a lot of judges would acknowledge that these are real issues as well. But that doesn't take away from the summation of the question.
Yeah, last 30 seconds, sir.
Yeah.
I heard my previous speaker, one of these, who doubted the current dispensation and there's intentions to delay this particular part. Yes, it may rise that part. But then when I see as a commoner, Congress not submitting their income tax, they're not filing their returns in National Herald case, then I say, who is asking for this kind of justifications?
Okay. No. I will put those questions to Manasvi, because the issue. I will come to you, Arshpreet. I'll just come to you and put those questions to Manasvi as well. Sharad Kohli, let me come in on this. Now, from a pure perception point of view, okay, forget the technicalities, forget the competence, incompetence. From a perception point of view, is the argument you just heard from Manasvi and Arshpreet, does it dig in? That listen, in this day and age, to say that it will take us 3 months to compile the data smells fishy. It smells like a burial for 3 months. And does that then leave a stain on conscience to say that this is not playing out, we should release the data as soon as possible?
See, Rishabh, if I was SBI, then in my reply where I sought extension of time, I would have said we are into February. We've started March now. My annual closing is in place. All my team is busy. The audits are going on. I have to submit results to the stock exchanges and so and so. So there could be a million reasons why State Bank is not ready. Whether the reasons are what Manasvi and Ashpreet say, whether they are true or not true, it is based on conjectures and surmises. We can only make an assumption. That's where SBI can simply say, okay, we are busy with our finalization of account. We are busy with the audit. We are busy with the annual closing. Please give us some time. We need to pull out the data because we were not prepared. That all of a sudden for 5 years, we need to retrieve the data. So, SBI can come up with our own set of arguments, and we can only make assumptions, Rishabh, for that matter.
Okay. So then let me put the question to Manasvi. Manasvi, how does it make a difference whether the data comes out this week or it comes out immediately after the elections close? Do you think that this data potentially sways elections?
No, if it does not make any difference, why is the SBI shielding the dates? Why is the SBI trying to delay it? If it does not make any difference.
It might be a genuine issue. Maybe we give them the benefit of doubt. It's a genuine issue. So I'm asking, why does it make a difference? Do you think that the data has something in it that is election moving?
Now the answer is also part of this debate only. As Mr. Kohli said that KYC has already been done, so they can produce the KYC. And when we say that we are the world's one of the best banking systems of the world, we are giving UPI to the world's economies. And now we can't say we can compile 16,000 crore, 16,000 individual data. That is what we can't comply. That can be complied within 24 hours. Are we saying SBI, the largest bank of India, the oldest bank of India, the best technology-led bank of India, can't comply 16,000 applications? That cannot be accepted by a common.
Manasvi, my question was different. Why does it matter? Okay, the court has ruled. So contempt of court is a separate issue. But to you and me, or a voter or the people of the country, why does it matter whether the data comes out this week or comes out 2 weeks later? If the data is going to be the same, we'll know one way or the other. How does it make a difference?
No, so this particular argument could have been there when this particular case was going on. No, we'll give it after the elections are over. In the similar understanding, when Kapil Sibal said ki let this Ram Janmabhoomi case be taken up after the election, the same people said that this is an election issue for them. That's why they are saying it. In the same understanding, it could be said that they want to delay it because it's an election issue.
Okay.
Why do you want to delay it? It's a common understanding. If this I don't see by giving the names also BJP is going to be hampered. They are going to win very easily. But why there is some kind of fear? There should not be any fear.
So now let me then pose the question to Arshpreet. Arshpreet, forget the legal part of it. Forget the legalese part of it. And you are proficient with the legalese. Now let's talk from the political perspective. Why does it matter to you and me as individuals whether the data comes out this week or data comes out next week or it comes out after the elections? How does that bona fidely impact potentially the elections?
Well, I think the bedrock of the democracy is elections. And if a voter knows what donation has been made, whom has it been made to, by whom has it been made, they will be able to make an informed choice. Therefore, this is not just important, it is paramount. Number two, unless certain people, certain parties might not want that to happen because they were against RTI also, they were against transparency also, have always been. They have been against accountability, against responsibility. That's how they run the show. So I'm also,
so you are saying that this data should come out before the elections because it matters to the elections. Do you think it will have an impact on how people vote, really?
Informed of 100%. I mean, what has the Honorable Supreme Court said? People have a right to know.
Yes.
Why? I just want to know one thing. Why should the people not know which all donors have donated for certain parties? Because one, if I earn something, if any citizen of India earns something, they have to pay tax on that. When they have to be transparent, they have to be accountable.
Okay.
Why should
No, I completely agree with you. I wish all political parties would do it. Okay, so now Arshpreet, the onion of the question. Now the electoral bonds are closed. I'm sure the Congress party receives donations. You claim the BJP gets the large majority of them, but you also have to function on donations. How else do you run the party, right? What measures are you now putting to receive donations? You came out with a scheme to receive crowdfunding donations online a few weeks ago. Are you going to publish the list of all your donors who have contributed in the past 5-10 years to the Congress party, everyone?
Thank you for the question, Rishabh. In fact, when the electoral bonds were existent, then at that point of time, also the Congress party had said there should be a national election fund. Electoral bonds is corrupt, it's unconstitutional, it's undemocratic, it's against transparency, therefore it should be done away with. And the RBI also asserted things. The Election Commission of India asserted things. For example, it's a retrograde step. Due to this, money laundering is happening, foreign funding.
No, that wasn't my question. For people, okay, so people, let me qualify that. For people watching the broadcast, the argument put forth was that there should be a pool created from public money and which all political parties get a roughly equivalent share. So there's a level playing field in terms of money. So I don't want to go there. My question, Ashpreet, was, are you willing to reveal all sources of funding for the Congress party over the past 5-10 years because it's retroactive? Are you happy to do it?
I've already answered a question. When the EBs were existent, we asked for a national election fund. Now, what is the modus behind that? It has already been enlisted by us. And number two, my question to the Bharatiya Janata Party is this, that the gentleman from the BJP, the spokesperson of the BJP said that, the SBI should divulge details. It's the right of people to know. So the BJP, if it does not agree with the SBI's actions, should condemn them right here on this debate to prove.
Okay, but okay. You've done anything but answer my question, because I don't know if tomorrow I'll have a PDF file, a PDF file on the Congress website saying that in the last 10 years, these are the people who contributed various sums of money to the Congress party.
We are the ones who brought RTI. We are the ones who ensured transparency, and they are the ones who did away with it.
So I should expect that very shortly that PDF file will be uploaded, and all the people who contributed.
We have always been very transparent. We do not play hide and seek.
Okay, that's neither a yes or a no, Arshpreet. Okay, I appreciate the situation you're in, so I understand it. It's not like anybody else will say yes or no either. So let me leave the last one.
I think the BJP could say that maybe.
All right.
Let's see the
okay. So Savio, now I don't think that this is going to be an issue that affects elections, but things as they stand are that the longer it is taking for SBI to furnish the data, the assumption is being made that there is something to hide. How do we get past that?
Well, I think within the ambit of the law, the SBI has to deliver on what the demand of the Supreme Court is and what the instructions of the Supreme Court is. And whether they delay in that is a legal ramification that they have to deal with. But coming to the fact of transparency that my good friend Ashpreet was talking about, there was this document that was signed in 2008 between the International Liaison Department of the Communist Party of China, which is nothing but the Foreign Covert Intelligence Agency of China, and the then General Secretary of the Indian National Congress, who is Rahul Gandhi. Why has that document not been made public till now if we are so transparent? Because, Mrs. Gandhi, when she was the UPA chairperson, in an interview to the Xinjiao News Agency in 2011, broadly spoke about this particular MOU that was signed in 2008, which focused on infrastructure trade. So why, if something as simple as that cannot be made transparent?
It cuts always. You can mention National Herald also 3 times over. Okay, you can mention foreign account 3 times over. Okay, the Congress spokesperson has just told you that they brought RTI, which is correct. They did bring RTI. But what he hasn't mentioned is, does the Congress party come under the ambit of RTI? The answer is no, because all political parties opposed as private entities not to be part of the RTI. I was present in those conversations at that point of time, so I know.
Correct.
So all political parties do not reveal their sources of funding. So last question,
but
Vineet Goenka. In principle, you're right. Vineet Goenka. So the last question is, here we stand. You and I can debate the retroactive precedents that is being set, the trust in government, but that's for government to take it up, challenge it in court, bring a legislation. That's for a later date. As it stands, is it looking bad? Is it an election issue?
No, it's not an election issue. People have clear mandate and they have understanding about development done in the last 10 years versus the non-developmental 10 years of Manmohan Singh. If you ask people, they ask questions to Congress party. They were transferred in Bofors or in Augusta Westland or National Herald. Why did not they file the IT returns? Why did they have notices from IT department? Now, all these things are the questions in the public domain. And if you know tomorrow, Congress can come out and say how much bond did they get. The rest can be assumed as to be BJP's. So if the Congress wants tomorrow, they can say, yes, we have got 450 crore rupees, 5,000 crore rupees.
No, but they won't have the names. They won't have the names. No political party technically will have the names.
So they can at least tell what is the quantum of money they have.
They can reveal the amount. So can the BJP. And the Congress argues that for every 1 rupee you get 10 rupees. I don't know. So on the basis of absence of information, I don't know. Okay, I'm out of time.
If you have trust, you will get more money.
So I'll leave it to the judgment of our viewers, because there are 2 points. One is the point of law. The point of law is telling you that the Supreme Court has come out with a ruling and has asked for the State Bank of India to furnish some information to it. The State Bank says we require more time to furnish that information. Now, that's the point of law, and the Supreme Court and the SBI, those are the 2 parties. Now, you can allude all sorts of things from it. What you need to decide is, why is it that political parties across the board, and there's not one, some have experimented with, the left has, Aam Aadmi Party has, none of them want to come out and tell you where they get the money from. Okay, why? Why can't we have a system in which everybody tells us a fair system on where they get that funding from? I don't know. But until then, you get to decide whether you feel that this is a smoking gun issue, whether you feel that some rocket lying that might burst before the elections or after it. Is it a voting matter for you? In the end, it's 16,000 entities. We don't know the quantum of the funds involved. But does political party funding require transparency in the country? Everybody, in principle, has to agree.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.